when I've thought about each of our sessions, we tried to do as much as possible. But each time we did one religion, it was just overwhelming. And we all know that if you did a semester on it in college, which I did with Islam, that was just not enough time. And yet I still wanted you to have a lot and maybe have something on paper and, have seen it or heard it. And I got to thinking about the fact that if you have all that crammed in your head, as you know from school, sometimes you don't have anything because there's so much you're trying to remember that you're going like, Islam? Where is that? Who is that? What is that? So what I've done, and I don't know if this will be more helpful, but what I've done is I've listed the 4 non-Christian religions, and I've put a simple, you see it fits on one little page, I've put a simple bullet sheet of some pretty basic and yet important things to know about that religion. Now, how much did I leave off? Oh, tons and tons and tons. And you are welcome to add and write on the back and say, Pat, you left off the most important thing, and that will be just fine. But this will get us started. Now, you may have noticed and thought I made a mistake, but on each page, you've got one non-Christian religion, and beside it, you've got Christianity. Now, why would that crazy old woman do that? What do you think? Why would I do it that way on each page?
I guess it's easy to compare.
Exactly. You don't have to flip back and forth to see. And then there was no reason to do a page on Christianity because you already had it 4 times, so I didn't do that. Because there are 2 things we want to take with us for the best that we can. Is an appreciation for those key factors. Those things that if somebody out there someday in the dining room or somewhere said something about the Tanakh, that you might have some idea of what that was or what religion it went to or whatever. And go away, I don't want to talk to you. That was a joke. So that's one thing we want. And the second thing, I think it's important for us to know what similarities, if any, we find, and what the biggest differences are. What the deal breakers might be, if there's such a way to put it as that. So does that make sense? I think that if we walk away here today with having just gone through this, and I do have a little fun quiz thingy at the end, just for fun, don't panic. Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, so let's go through and let's just be real informal with this and look at what we've got. Now, why does the first page have Hinduism on it?
I guess because it's different from all the rest of them.
You could probably say that.
Have one on it.
Why is Hinduism first?
Is it the oldest?
Yes, ma'am?
Is it the oldest?
You got it. Bingo. It's the oldest. Yeah, it's from back there in Cro-Magnon days. I'm exaggerating. But it's from way back when, yes. And I didn't put that on here, but that's why it's first. Now, looking at that, I tried to highlight or bold some things that I thought might help it jump off the page for you. When that first thing says, Hinduism teaches that God's presence exists in all of creation. What do you think that tells us about their view of God?
It's everywhere.
It hasn't changed.
So are they monotheistic?
No.
So do they believe in God?
They turn out to have gods and goddesses.
They really don't. They believe in it more as an idea that exists in everything. And our God created everything, but he's not a piece of a tree or a piece of a tomato. He created those things. So one of the things you want to remember is they have a very, very broad view of God. Not totally atheistic, but so broad that you can't really say that they are monotheistic at all. They don't worship a God. Monotheistic, monovision, I've got monovision in this side, mono, one God. So the monotheism, the religions that worship one God. That might help you later on today, just saying.
Oh, write it down.
if there was something to be considered their supreme deity, what did we learn that they call that? And this is where they are a little bit similar to us. The word is Brahman. Brahman is the word they use for the supreme deity. And they give the Brahman credit for creating things, everything. Is that anything like Christianity?
Sort of.
Yeah.
So you could put a little plus by there just for fun. That's a positive, but we certainly don't call him Brahman. Okay. Brahman has no gender. Is that true of our God? Well, we've got some pretty fundamental folks, and some folks from back in the day that would argue with me on that. God does not have any gender.
He's just God.
He's just God. He's too big to be just a gender. But I tell you what, when I pray in a church and I use the term Mother God, there are people who go straight up in the ceiling, straight up. So, oh, it's so good to see you.
Be here.
Honey, would you?
Yes, it is see you.
I will just say this much. I tried to take all this I threw at you over all these times and just reduce it to just some basics. And so what you've got there is on each page is one of the four religions, and right across from it is Christianity each time, so you can easily see it. And I didn't try to give you everything because we just can't remember everything. So we're down to number 3, just saying that in the Hindu religion, where their view of God per se is very broad, they believe that God has, and we're talking about how the things are different and how they're alike. And we said that that's a thing that's like Christianity, because our God isn't a boy and he isn't a girl. He's much more than that. Yeah. And what about all-knowing and all-present?
He's that all
That
right.
sounds like Christianity, doesn't it? So there's another little plus, okay? Now, the problem we get into with the God thing and Hinduism is the very next bullet. Look, read that to yourselves. And then read the next bullet after that. Does that kind of run the train off the track? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And you say yes, why?
Many gods.
It's getting kind of multiple there, isn't it? Yes. And that's what we learned. Remember, this was our first religion. And that's where we learned they had these things all over. Remember all those objects? And it's a little confusing because they would say that they didn't pray to any one of those as if it was Brahma. And yet they could go to any of those for different things and they would, if they would receive them. It was confusing. And so it's all these other deities that existed. There are 2 primary ones, and then all these, I guess, juniors. I'm not making fun of anyone's religion, but all these smaller ones, I guess you might say. But then, those are definitely negatives, aren't they? Or minuses, they're not like Christianity. But then the very next one, what does it say? The divine essence dwells within each person. Does that sound like Christianity?
Yep.
If I don't say that every Sunday, you need to call me on it. Yes, absolutely. There again, though, the difference between essence as opposed to the supreme deity, I don't know that we know enough about Hinduism to catch the difference there, but it gives me a little bit of worry that that would be that we might have parting in the ways there. Now, this is not new. We saw this probably in at least 1 or 2 others. They do believe in reincarnation, don't they?
We don't believe in that kind of reincarnation.
Well, let's look at the difference there. With a constant cycle of being born, living, and dying on the path to enlightenment. Hold on just a second.
I sort of believe you got it.
I think
you
so,
go
too.
ahead, You got it lighted the first time, don't we?
Hold on just a second, I want to make sure I haven't messed up something. No, no. But what I'm looking at there is, and this is what really gives me a hard time, we've got at least 2, if not 3, that have reincarnation in their way of thinking. And a lot of it has to do with, and I'll make myself dizzy with this, it has to do with you just go along, and then you die, and then you come back, and you keep going, and you're moving along this path to enlightenment, and you'll hear that again. And then there's at least another religion that says you are trying to do good works in this life, and you don't know whether it's the 43rd or the 2nd or whatever, so that you will come back at a higher level, and then a higher level. You might drop back one or whatever, but eventually you will reach the equivalent of heaven.
Christianity says you don't work your way up.
Exactly. So is that like us?
No.
Do we believe in any form of reincarnation? Not really. Not that I'm aware of. We joke about it sometimes, but we don't. And hold that thought, Tom, because that's
You
going
might
to
like to come back.
That's right.
As one.
I don't know.
Oh, goodness. Well, I guess if you get to the pearly gates and you don't get in, I guess you could say, I believe in reincarnation, let me try again. You know, kids always want a do-over. They always want another chance. Now, I think some people were surprised to hear about yoga because we've sort of been indoctrinated to think of yoga as what?
Exercise.
Exercise. Is it exercise?
Not to
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
But it's more of an exercise with a spiritual purpose to it. And that's one of several, I've forgotten the number, several types of things they do in yoga, not just that spiritual exercise. But that was from Hindu on. It's big with them. And one thing that we'd all be embarrassed if we didn't know on Jeopardy, what is considered sacred in the Hindu faith that we don't think is sacred? Cows. And we didn't discuss any other religion that thought that.
Well, you know, the Jews won't eat pork, pigs, and these folks don't eat cattle.
But for 2 totally different reasons.
Yeah.
And Jews are kind of getting away from that a little bit. Well, why did the Jews in the Old Testament not eat pork?
They were
Feelings.
unclean.
Yeah, and it was. Not unclean the way we did, but unclean. But we're all old enough, surely you remember your mother or whomever cooking sausage till it was leather. Why? So we wouldn't get food poisoning. Yes. And I still have a problem with pink pork, but it's okay now because they have the process of fixing it so that that's not a danger. But back then, pork could be very dangerous. But the cow was not being eaten, not for any dietary purpose, but
I
because
guess if you in India and you ate a cow, you were in trouble.
Exactly. But it was a symbol of sacredness. But you don't eat the symbol. Our flag, think of our flag. We get upset if any, I know it's a touchy subject these days, but I mean, my background is if the flag touched the floor, you had to burn it, and if you didn't hold it just a certain way, you couldn't mess around with the flag. Was there anything holy about the flag? No, but it was a symbol of all that we consider. Does that make sense? So it's not so much about cowism as it is about the fact that it was a symbol, but you don't eat your symbol.
You know, in that part of the world, where Hindus were everywhere, cows just walked everywhere.
Yeah, they still do.
They walk in your house.
Well, Pat, they do not worship objects then, like
Well,
statues.
there's all those little gods, those little deities up there.
You like to have a house god.
Uh,
You could have a house god.
Yeah. I would say to some extent you might call it worship. They certainly would go and, like, I'm making this up, but like for injury, you might go to this little god. And And if you wanted to meet somebody, not that they did their marriages that way, but you might go here. If you wanted to have a baby, you might go here. And so I don't know that you call that worship, but they certainly gave him a lot of credit. A lot
I
of
read about having house gods, you know, folks gave food to it every day.
Oh, wait, well, that's Buddhism.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. My hairdresser owns her studio, her salon, and there's a Buddha out front, and there's always fresh fruit and flowers and burning candles and things to show respect for that, yes. But not as much with Hinduism. Now, I don't know if we went across enough, so don't let me rush us too much. Make sure we didn't see anything else that we thought was like Hinduism. The main things, I think, are the presence of each person, although we differ about what that is, creating everything in the universe. What else, guys?
The Hindus have a number of sacred texts, whereas we have the Bible.
Exactly. And here again, there's not anything in this world that someone can't debate. We've got how many books that we hold sacred? 66, yeah. But for us, it's one book with 66 divisions. So, you know, there is another one that we could quibble about. What if somebody said, well, Hindus have many names for God. I could write 100 different names I use for God. In fact, when I'm writing the prayers, I don't want to be monotonous and I say, God, forgive me, but I want to find another way to introduce this prayer. And there's Father God, there's Holy God, Almighty God, Magnificent God, Magnanimous God, Compassionate God, Caring God, Loving God, Mother God. I mean, you know, you can just go on. Those are
God.
Yeah. Those are just beginnings. Those are just beginnings. But is it the same thing? I don't know.
I'm not
I
sure.
don't know. Is it the end of the world for us to know whether it's a big deal or not?
No.
No. Because
Do
we
they
know.
actually pray to their supreme deity?
Right. And if I were to say, Compassionate Tom, and then I were to say, Mary. Her name's not Mary, is it? I've given her a different name. I've given him an adjective that describes him. So I think what we do is attribute adjectives to God. And when they're talking about it, they're talking about different names per se. That's just, I would not begin to bet any money that I write about that. That's just the way I'm looking at it, okay?
Or do they go and pray to God,
To their God,
to a specific
No.
place? They
we
don't.
did talk about that they do not. They don't hold worship services. They don't have any kind of community worship or glorification of their God that way. No.
In other words, it's a personal God.
No, it is not. Remember that. That's a big, big difference in just about all of these from Christianity. They're all one way, and ours is like this. Yeah. Ours is from God down and from us up, and there's a relationship. It could be, Tom, what you're thinking about is that it might be a personal decision if they wanted to pray to him. But, you know, when you're raised in a certain way of doing things, it might never enter their heads to do that. Yeah. So I can't answer that for sure. All right, let's move on, and it doesn't mean we can't come back. The next religion, chronologically, was Buddhism. Now, a minute ago, when I first started out, a couple of you were thinking you were hearing some similarities. Where in the world, and I mean that literally, where in the world was Hindu developed, or did Hindu develop?
India?
In the East,
And where in the world did Buddhism develop?
same place.
You reckon any of them ever rubbed shoulders? Absolutely. And I didn't put it here, but you may remember we talked about the fact that Buddha, before they called him Buddha, grew up pretty much, in a Hindu family, in a Hindu community. I grew up Baptist. Baptist. Do you think I have forgotten or abandoned everything I learned in the Baptist church? I hope
You
not.
sure have.
I hope not. Some I might have kept that I shouldn't have, but still, we have those influences. So, let's look at this. Read that first paragraph that doesn't have any bullets, and I'm going to be quiet for a minute. So, some of this sound familiar? Don't say no.
Sound like Catholics giving that position and money and becoming monks. It sounds like, if you were wealthy and you decide to give it up and live a simple life and teach others that, you could form your own religion.
You could, just like I could form a religion that believes that God is in three persons and that my faith and the faith I'm teaching is founded on the Ten Commandments, and that this new religion I'm developing depends on you following the golden rule. What would people say? Well, fool, we already got that. We don't need that. So anybody can form a religion, and they do, don't they?
Well, evidently people didn't think that it was religion to start with, did they?
Not so much. Of all that we studied, there probably is less religion, per se,
Yeah.
in Buddhism. Can you remember back when we showed the Buddhist temples and that sort of thing? Yeah, it's probably the least godly, for lack of a better word, and probably the most atheistic, if you want to get right down to it. Yeah, let's look at some of the bullets and maybe it will remind us of why that's the case. The Buddha is not worshipped as a god. Now, I talked about the fact that many Buddhists have the statues and fruit and vegetables and things that, it's like an offering. That would sound like you give an offering to a god. It would sound to us like Old Testament God, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But to them, it's more a sign of respect and kind of a following of what they've been taught. So it's not so much a worship. Buddha, they did not see as a god. They saw Buddha, this man, as someone who went out, remember, on this long trip trying to find the answer. One of my favorite Jimmy Buffett songs is called He Went to Paris. I don't know if you've ever heard it. It makes me cry every time I hear it. He went to Paris looking for answers to questions he never knew. And at the end, he's an old man and he never found the answers. But anyway, that's what he was doing. He was trying to find the meaning of life, because in his home and with his young bride and his young son, he's like, there's got to be more to it than this. And he had this enlightening, this epiphany out there in the middle of nowhere. So they saw him as this man who had learned or found the way, I hate to take that word, and was then teaching what he had found.
Sounds like he left his family and everything, doesn't
He did. Yeah, he
he?
did.
Just walked out.
Yeah, he was gone, what did I say, 45 years? That sounds close enough. Okay, so there's
Was
no...
he married? Do we know whether he was married and had a family?
Yeah, remember he got married when he was in his was he 27 or 17? But he was very young, his wife was very young. And he had one son.
What she thought when he went off and didn't come back.
I don't know, we didn't get to hear that part, but it would make an interesting story, wouldn't it? Okay. We talked more about the foundations of Buddhism rather than we did anything about deity and gods. And if you look there, it says the foundation of Buddhism is based on a set of 3 universal truths and 4 noble principles. Do you remember anything about those? No?
Well, Christian people would hopefully follow moral living and thinking and behavior.
Absolutely. We haven't gotten to that one yet, but hold that thought there. There's some similarities there. Okay? the universal truths and the noble principles are not anything we disagree with. That part we're okay with. And then moving on to the next one that Tom was on their philosophy of principles and truths lead them to do these things. The whole idea of moral living, thinking and behavior. And I want you to underline that. I wish I had. I want you to underline, well, actually, I made it bold. Seeking wisdom. I know you remember every word I've ever said. So you remember how I said over and over, their thing is wisdom. That Buddhists believe that they save themselves. They redeem themselves. And they do it through learning to do better. They learn the right way, they educate themselves, and they get better. I think that sounds pretty good.
Well, what kind of wisdom would they be seeking, you think?
Every kind. Every kind. Anything that would be to learn. Yeah. And since I'm a lifelong learner and I want to learn everything there is, I don't have a problem with that. My problem is with the fact that that's great for me, but that doesn't make me God. And that doesn't save me. It just makes me know a little bit more. It doesn't make me smarter either. It just makes me know a little bit more. So I'm all about, seeking wisdom. And people that know a lot of stuff. Look at the Jeopardy contestants. Would you bet every one of those contestants is wise?
Well, Sherlock Holmes didn't believe in that because he said your brain would only hold so many things. And if some of them weren't useful, you don't want to put them in there because they interfere with others.
And when was Sherlock Holmes around? In the 1800s? And we've learned that the brain never feels up. And we only use about 10% of it. Some of us maybe not as much as 10%, but I do the best I can. So, wisdom.
I guess all the folks in jail in trouble, they didn't use the best part.
They didn't make good decisions. And they didn't become wise by seeing what other people did that didn't work out so well.
Yes.
But we don't teach that so much. But their whole thing is, if I'm going to get better in this world, I have to do it. Now, have you ever heard anything growing up that sounds a little bit like that? Not religious statement, but just an everyday statement.
That's your mother talking to you.
Yeah. You need to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And that has affected a lot of people's thinking about helping folks in dire straits. Well, if they just get up and pull themselves up by their own bootstraps.
Yeah, and then they add, I did.
Yeah, I did. Well, let's go back and trace all your circumstances. But anyway, that's not today's lesson. So, the whole idea is whatever situation that I'm in, if I want it to be better, whatever better means to me, they think it's going to be through various types of learning and wisdom. Okay, so that's real big to know. 5 precepts. Those precepts I don't think are worth your brain cells to remember as much as that those 5 precepts pretty much give them the same things they ought not do that our 10 commandments give us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You shouldn't kill, steal, lie, misuse sex, and use drugs or alcohol. That pretty much cover a lot of it in the 10 commandments. So. Now, here's where we need to learn this word. Underline karma. It's not the only religion that has karma, does it? Is it? I can't even talk. Is it?
Not really.
We saw it in the very first one, didn't we? Where do you think what's his face? Gautama. I can't say Gautama right. Or pre-Buddha. Where do you think he got the idea of karma? From his raising, from his rearing, I should say, from his Hindu education. So the Hindus had karma, or believed in karma. They're thinking about karma. How did you improve your karma if you were Hindu? You did something. I'm gonna keep it real simple. So I'm a Hindu, and I want life to be better, and I want to move in the right direction, so I'm going to do some good stuff. I'm a Buddhist, and I want my life to be better and move in the right direction, so I'm going to learn some stuff. You see, I'm going to get smarter and wiser. I'm going to do good deeds. I don't see either one of those as wrong, but that shows a little bit of the differdifferentiation that I hope will help. Is that helpful?
One's using it, the other isn't.
I missed that, I'm sorry.
The ones using it, and the others of it,
Maybe, maybe.
Buddhism sound like you're just learning it so you know it.
Well, I was getting ready to say, let's compare that now to our Christianity. Are we against doing good deeds? No, absolutely not.
But they don't get you to heaven.
Absolutely. And where we fall short in our relationships is when we think we are better than other people or even other religions because of the things that we do. So, doing good is good. The reasons, it's not the what, it's the why, right? It's why do we do it? And guess who always knows the answer? God. We think we're getting away with it. We're not, because He knows our motivation, you know? I don't feel like going to that food pantry today, but you know, all my parishioners are going to see that I'm not there, and I'll have to get up and go. You think God has any idea? Still good that I went. Still good that I went.
He saw it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so that's something that is similar, those 5 precepts. There's another thing we talked about, the karma. Oh, I'm sorry, I got off track. Karma. So now we're looking at the way the Buddhists look at it. With karma, they're focusing on their responsibility and accountability. And I've been going on and on about wisdom, but that's what they're really saying, is I'm responsible for everything about my life. I'm accountable for everything about my life.
Well, Christianity believes that.
Not everything. But I was getting ready to say, I think we could use a little bit more of that. And I certainly grew up being held responsible, but not for everything. There are circumstances. And if I said, I'm a well-educated person, because I went to school and I learned all that stuff all by myself. Those schools, those teachers, those materials, I didn't have anything to do with it. It was all about me. Yeah, that's when you think it's all about you and your responsibility, your accountability.
That doesn't get you very far, does it?
No, not in this world. Am I skipping anything that might be a plus or a negative as far as comparing them? Okay, I want to make sure that you're going to carry these key points with you. All right, now, we have Hinduism that started first. And in that whole area, we're never going to get totally away from some of that early thinking. So next we're going to go to Judaism. Now, how does it rank in the large to small?
This is
Small.
It's just a little bit, isn't it? But it's been around.
They're very, very inclusive, which
We're
makes them
talking about
smaller.
size right now.
Well,
And history.
that makes them smaller.
I don't know about that. They've been around since Abraham.
Oh, yeah.
And what was Abraham promised? He would have offspring that couldn't be counted any more than the sands.
The stars in the
sand.
sky.
Yeah, and the stars in the sky, right. And, I'm sure that there are those who say, well, it's not over yet. And there are those like us who give credit to our Jewish forefathers and mothers that would say, we're some of those stars too, we're some of those grains of sand as well. But we do not count ourselves as members of the Jewish faith. So,
Well, Jews don't go out and proselyte.
that's right, that's right. They
If you
don't-
want to be a Jew, you have to ask.
Yep. They don't believe in doing that. And there are times when someone looks at me and says, are you saved? That I want to kind of become a Jew. No, just kidding, I don't really. But we've done a lot of harm. Christians have done a great deal of harm with our proselytizing. And a lot of it's been done innocently because I think a lot of folks and a lot of groups thought they were doing the right thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I like to give grace to most people and say they really thought they were doing the right thing. But if it turns people away, is that what Jesus preached? Go out there and teach them everything I've taught you and baptize them in my name. And if they don't like it, kill them. Or tell them they're going to hell. No, I don't see that in my Bible. I could have missed it, but I don't see that. Okay, so with Judaism, it's the smallest. What percentage of all the Jews, how many live in Israel?
41%.
So we could say almost half. I like to round things up or down. So almost half live in Israel, and the other half live where?
Yeah.
Yes.
Here.
So if 40 and 40 is 80%, 20% are kind of sprinkled around, you know. So that's just a good thing to have in your mind. Are there core teachings and practices? This is the first time we see the M word.
Well,
The
you know,
Jews
there
are
groups-
what?
Groups in Israel
Monotheistic.
that have different core
They're
practices.
monotheistic. The Jews believe in one God. What other religions do we know that believe in one God?
Christianity.
Absolutely, absolute Christianity. There's
Islam.
another one, Islam.
Yeah.
And it's really important because when people say, and I don't even know how many of our citizens, let alone the Christians in the world, when someone says the Abrahamic or the Abrahamic religions, they don't hear that they're saying Abraham. The three religions that spring from Abraham are Judaism, Islam, and later, Christianity. And we need to know that, don't you think? We need to know that. I think we need to know that. So, the Jews are monotheistic. They believe in one God. Is that like that? We said that was like us. What about the Ten Commandments?
I believe in that for sure.
Would you say they believe, no, believe's the wrong word. Would you say it plays a bigger role in their worship and their training than it does maybe in some of our Protestant churches?
Yes.
I think so. We kind of learn it and leave it. And I'm not saying it stays away from us, but Moses received the Ten Commandments. And that was huge because Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. If he had not been led by God to free them from Egypt, who knows what might have happened. And so they see that as absolutely pivotal to who they are and where they are and what they are. And so when Moses was called up on that mountain and received directly from God the Ten Commandments, there's no one bigger in the Jewish faith than Moses, other than God. Would you agree? Yeah.
He came down and they wondered, where has he been?
Well, yeah, that's another story. Yeah. They have been hardy. But that's something important to know.
Well, you know, I don't think Christian groups, various divisions, get as divisive as some of the Jewish groups.
Some of the Jewish groups.
I'm thinking of the real Orthodox Jews, you know,
They're not so bitter as just different lifestyles.
they have a real different lifestyle.
Right. They just choose a different path. Now, when we Protestants disagree, we go to war. And our disagreements are at times theological, but most of the time they're about window dressing.
Yeah.
Most of the time they're about what the church should be shaped like, where the priest should stand, if a woman should be the priest, or you should call her pastor, you know, all those things. Like, I will not, and Chuck knows this, I probably need to say this someday, but there are people that come to the chapel on Sunday that do not know what the altar means. The altar is that table at the front of the chapel, and it's in every Christian church. That is Christ's table, and it is the last piece, if you will, from the Old Testament of the altar in the temple. And the table isn't holy, but what it symbolizes is. And you may have noticed, if you were with me from the 3 years I've been here, I have moved all around and I've moved behind it. I will never preach in front of it. Because what's the message?
You're more important than the altar.
And in a tiny chapel, I found that it's taken up a lot of real estate. So I've kind of gone back to doing it on the side, because that's about the only choice I have. But I know there are people that think, well, why don't you just move over there in the middle? Anyway, let's move on. But those are the kind of wars we have.
I remember my brothers.
Whether we use the piano or the organ, whether the organ's too loud. The people that like loud organ will make a new church, the soft organ people will go over here. So you know what I'm talking about. Real important stuff.
My brother was an attorney and he was working with a black church. And the preacher says, I need a big area because I move around.
I have a lot of colleagues that move around. I came to ministry so late in life that I can't do that. Because if I move too far from the kitchen sink, I won't know what I'm cooking, you know? So I don't have that kind of short-term memory anymore.
You do both.
And I never have had it really. That's not been one of my
The
gifts.
edge too.
Yeah. God's been good to me, but that's not one of my gifts. Okay. They also ramble sometimes and they don't have a coherent thought. I'm being judgmental. Okay, where are we? We did the 10 Commandments. Okay, beyond God's law that's in the 10 Commandments, what's important to them?
Righteous and justice.
And justice. And you will see that all through the Old Testament. Micah 6:8, what does it say? This is what the Lord says. You shall what? Love justice. Walk. How? Love justice, walk, blah, 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 and stay in love with God. I just was like, see, I don't have any memory. But you will see things like that all through the Old Testament. And you see it a lot with Paul's writing. In Romans, there's so much about justification and getting right with God and so forth. So they're not into the New Testament, but they're into righteousness and justice. Is that a big thing? Would you have a hard time with a neighbor who was into justice? And I would be all for that. I'd be all for that. Now, Israel. If you've been to Israel, you know it's a traffic, tourist, religious nightmare because the three big religions, the three Abrahamic religions, all come to Israel. They just all do. And it's a zoo all the time. It's a good zoo, but it's a zoo. Israel is very important to whom?
Jews.
The Jews. But is that like us? How many, I should say Americans, how many Christians do you think either have been to Israel or would like to go? Well, let's take a poll. Everyone in here, you could go either way. If you've been to Israel or would like to go to Israel, raise your hand. Okay. That's a huge percentage of us. And if you said, well, if I were younger, I understand. But the point is, that's not a Jewish thing. But it's, can you help me understand, help me say to you why it's a different kind of importance for the Jewish faith?
Because that's where they started.
Was Jesus in Jerusalem? Absolutely. But he wasn't there till centuries after Jerusalem was the center of the Israelite nation. So I think we can understand that. I won't even compare it to Jamestown. That would be foolish. But it's because that is literally their beginning. And who gave them the land in Israel? God. God. And he gave it to them how?
The 12 brothers.
To go in and take it.
The 12 tribes of Judah.
But he told them to go in and take it, and it was somebody else's property.
Well, he said it was their property. What tribe did not get land?
The priests.
The preachers. Yeah. Because that was not their thing. Yeah. So, all right, moving along here. The Hebrew Bible, oh, you've got to get this. Remember? It's called the Tanakh. And that means the whole Hebrew Scripture, not any one piece of it. Because we know the first 5 books of the Bible have a special name, don't they? Pentateuch, or the Law, or the books of Moses. They call it different things. But that doesn't mean that that's the name for their Bible, because it goes all the way through, remember? The books of the law, the writings, the prophecies, and then the really nice writings. You know, it covers all of that. So all of that is Tanakh. And remember, my little mnemonic was tank, big old tank that holds all of it. So the name of their Bible is Tanakh. Do we have a primary holy text?
Yes, the New Testament.
The whole Bible.
That's Marcion. Go back and study about Marcion. Marcion was a man way back in history that truly believed that the God of the Old Testament he was one God, he was gone. And we just should focus on the New Testament. The Bible is our text. The Bible is our text. And in that Bible, does it have sections? It absolutely does. And quite frankly, they're not all that different. They may have slightly different names or whatever, but they're not all that different. Prophets are prophets. Wisdom books are wisdom books. And the law books, those first 5, were all of us about genealogy and numbers. You want to know what's in numbers? It's numbers. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but there are a lot of numbers in there. Okay. Synagogue. You definitely want to know what they call their worship places, a synagogue. They may call it, they might name it like Temple Emmanuel here in Greensboro, but they call it a synagogue. Where's the temple?
Jerusalem.
Where's the temple? Well, it's still on the drawing board. God's drawing board. That's what's talked about in Revelation. When God comes down and takes us all together. Jerusalem will be a thing, an atmosphere as much as anything. But Jerusalem has never been rebuilt, has it? No. I've stood on the steps of the destroyed temple. When was it destroyed? Was it 77 AD? About 35 to 40 years after Christ was crucified. And I believe every rock fell, and what did he say would happen? That's what happened. All the boulders came down, and not one was standing on top of another. So, and it's still a pretty big mess. It's still a pretty big mess. So they worship in the synagogue, and they live not for the idea, but they certainly would love the idea that in Jerusalem the temple would be rebuilt. Now, growing up, I knew that the young men did the bar mitzvah, and that was a celebration. It's a tremendously significant worship service, and they have to get up and sing from memory, a cappella, this long
Text.
in Hebrew, to pass this bar mitzvah. But fortunately now the girls get to do the same thing.
Yeah, botany.
Theirs is a bat mitzvah. Yeah, just a slight different. It almost sounds the same because they don't always pronounce the end of it. So, do we have anything like that in our church, in our Christian churches?
Baptism.
A little bit. Baptized.
Baptism, sort of, kind of, in that it's a ritual. Where we would differ is that it's a ritual that is just such a sacred commitment and a belief in Christ. But I don't know their text well enough to know, but I suspect they have to commit to their beliefs. I have no doubt about that. And I wish I knew more, if I don't. But what I was thinking about is that, like growing up Baptist, we had the girls' auxiliary and the boys, what were they called? I've already forgotten. And we would have to learn these things, and we would move up, and we would get like different sashes and things, and we'd pick them like Princess and Queen Regent and Queen Mother of all worlds. I don't know, but all these things. And that was a lot of fun, and we learned a lot of things. From my friends, I know that the different Protestant faiths have done some of those things. Catholics have First Communion. Oh, that's very special. Some churches have christenings. The Methodist Church, I can say for sure, does not. We do infant baptism, but we do not do christenings. And so a lot of it's terminology, but that terminology carries a meaning. It does carry a meaning. When the baby's christened, it's given a name. It's not baptized. So just a different way of looking at it. Anything else you can think of?
How about confirmation?
Absolutely. Just went out of my head, confirmation. And again, different churches do it differently. And what breaks my heart is it's not being taken very seriously in a lot of smaller churches. I don't know about larger churches. But confirmation is after like a semester of study around the 8th grade. That has varied, it can. And then, when they finish it, and they have a mentor the whole time, and then they come and make a statement of commitment to Jesus Christ. If they haven't been baptized, then they are baptized before the service. And they all receive their recognition as being fully baptized. Here's the thing that will blow your mind. And I can only speak for the Methodist Church. It could well be this way in others, but if you're baptized as an infant, you really aren't fully baptized because you can't accept Christ as an infant, right? When are you fully baptized? When are you fully baptized? After confirmation. After confirmation. If you're a baby, now if you're an adult, not necessarily. I know a lot of folks have gotten baptized as infants and have just grown up and they've moved around and they've just never done that confirmation. And they have no clue that until they personally acknowledge Christ and become baptized, it won't be finished. So, anyway. All right, moving on. One more. Islam. Monotheistic. Why? You ought to be able to argue why now. Why do we know it's monotheistic?
They worship one God.
They worship one God, but where do they stem from?
Judaism, I guess. Because they believe in Abraham.
Well, they did believe in Abraham because Abraham fathered the son who became the father of those people.
Yeah.
Remember Ishmael? Ishmael was sent out to the desert and then he raised up his own world, and that empire was the Arabic Empire. Now that was long before the Islam faith, but that's their background, if that makes any sense. So we know that they are monotheistic because they spring from Abraham, as we do and as the Jews do, if that makes any kind of sense. All right, let's move through here quickly. Where did the Islam faith, even though it sprang originally from Abraham, where did it become a practicing faith, if you will? Who started it, for lack of a better word? Muhammad, exactly. Was Muhammad sacred? No. Was he a deity? No. Did many people, when he was on earth, and probably afterwards, react and deal almost as if he were holy? Yes, absolutely. I mean, some of us felt that way about Billy Graham. You know, so I mean, it happens. It happens. So Muhammad started the faith, but did he just wake up one day and say, like Tom said, I think I'm going to start me a religion? This Hinduism and stuff isn't working for me. No. Why did he start it? Or how did he start it? Did he read a book about it?
Something came to it, didn't it?
Something came to it. What was it? Not all that different from Buddhism in a way, but a little bit more sophisticated, if you will.
In other words, knowledge.
He received the entire faith for Islam from God in dreams. And it wasn't like he dreamed about it and then he decided how to write it down. It was as if God dictated it word for word. That's where most of us probably have a little bit of a problem. But,
Well, you know, some Christian groups think that Moses dictated everything word for word.
well, he did a lot in the first 5 books. But remember what we always say, we believe the Bible is the inspired word of God. We're not mechanical, you know, God came down as a mechanical pencil, and, you know, no.
And some folks say you can't change the same word in it.
King James Version.
Yep, some folks will tell you that, never mind. Not going there. Okay, Allah. Who's Allah?
That's God.
Yes. And do you know that there are some Christians and Jews and plain old people that are offended when they hear the word Allah?
Just another, their name for God.
It's in their language.
Yeah.
They didn't create that word for God. That's in their language. Yeah. And so when we hear the French word for God, we don't go, oh, blasphemy, or the Spanish word or anything else. So it's just, it's just the Islamic word for it. Okay, they believed that Muhammad was God's what?
Messenger.
Final messenger.
Exactly, because they've been coming in forms of prophets and all that other stuff forever, right? But this is the one. If I say this is the one, what do you think of? Who do we think that God said this is the one?
Jesus.
Jesus. And we believe it. We know it, that Jesus is the one. Well, they believe that Muhammad was the one. He came, God gave him the words, he shared it, and he didn't even know how to read and write. So other people wrote it down as he said it, and that was all they needed to know. And we know that all of the things that he shared were put together in a book that's called
Quran. The Quran?
Close. And I didn't put it in here, I'm ashamed. I said, we need to write that down. The Quran.
Quran. I'm saying Quran.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed in myself. That's their holy book. And there is just the one. I mean, obviously they have other things, but that's their holy book. So if Muhammad was the one, nobody's come since then for the Islamic faith, right? No. I mean, there have been leaders and, obviously all those things, but no one that speaks for God. No messenger for God. So how do they feel about Jesus?
Just another prophet.
It's just a prophet.
Close. You're remembering. They think he's a prophet. They think, for most parts, that he is the highest level prophet next to Muhammad. As their religion goes, they have very high respect for Jesus. Now, somebody you meet on the street of that faith may not feel that way, just like we talked about. We all see things differently.
In history, they killed off a lot of Christians.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock. Let me just quickly say, are we expected to take a pilgrimage anywhere?
Oh, what? No, we're not.
But do we? Do we do Road to Emmaus? Do we go to Israel? Do we go on retreats? We do things, but again, we're not about doing as much as we are about believing and caring and so forth. And so we do those things by choice as opposed to it being written down that if you don't do this before you die, it's going to be trouble. No, they're all good things that can be done. And I just wish I'd had time to do even more than I've done because they do make all the difference. Okay, we talked about the Islam people of today being 2 groups, Sunnis and Shiites, right?
Yeah.
What's
And
the
they
big
don't get
group?
along.
No, and they ain't never going to, I don't think. What's the big group though? Think of the sun, that big old sun,
The Sunni.
the Sunnis. Yes, I think it's like 91% or something. The huge, vast majority are Sunnis. And then the others tend to be Shiites. But all that started over who was going to become the leader after Muhammad died. And he didn't tell them who should be. And one group wanted it to be a natural heredity thing, and the other thought it should be an election thing. And it's been HE double hockey sticks ever since. Yeah. So,
I
with
don't
that
guess
said,
they'll ever get together.
no, I don't think so. If you said that a woman had on a hijab, what would she be wearing? A
I
sarong.
had.
And we tend to see that more, especially in this country, as so many of our Muslim friends have been in the workplace and in sports and that sort of thing. But some Muslim women wear the burqa. And what's a burqa?
It's a close.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Disguise.
That's right. Who's right? It's not our place to say. It's not our place to say. But having watched students for 50 years, I tell you what, we could use a little more covering up. That's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. Okay, I don't want to leave, and if you have to, you can. But I just want you to do this just for fun. Take one of these, and then I'll tell you what to do. It's like a kid, you'll be halfway finished before I can do it. This is just for fun. Just for fun. Okay. Charlie, you want to do it? Yeah. I'm grading yours. Now, you've got a list of terms, and the first thing you're going to do is label them, put them with the religion they go with. So like number 1, I could just write 1 under the religion it goes with, just so you can see clearly. I guess you could draw a line, but either way you want to do it. So first, match all the terms with the religion. Now, can one term go to more than one religion?
Yes.
I'll let you answer that. And then last but not least, I would love it if you would just write out a little simplistic meaning. Not anything fancy, but just kind of what that term means to you from what you studied. And we're going to do it without our notebooks. and then this course will be over.
We've got Islam twice and left off Hinduism.
Islam's over at
Oh.
twice,
I thought I changed
Yeah.
that.
and Hindu's not over
I
at
saw
all.
it, and I thought I changed it. Folks, I corrected this earlier, but I must have copied the wrong one. The second Islam, just make that Hinduism. That's important, very important. I certainly did not slight the Hindus, or didn't mean to. I was doing this rather quickly. So Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity.
I have no idea.
Oh, those words break my heart. I have no idea.
You can do it any way you want.
Just do this.
I want a copy of you. Copy.
If I can too.
Just look at each one and give it your best thought, and if there's just nothing, then skip over it. And when you've been all the way through the list, we'll take just a quick minute.
What's the second ism supposed to be?
She's in shoe bags. In shoe bags.
No, I mean, there are two isms. What's this?
Oh, Hindu is the second one.
Okay.
Isn't that?
If you'll just look up or put your pencil down or whatever, then I'll know that you've done what you're going to do. You've done what you're going to do. The only thing I ask is that you don't tell me there's one you've never heard of. They'll just kill me. I'll just lay down and die.
I don't remember what TANUK meant.
Well, nobody's going to get them all perfect.
Okay, let's just stop there because it looks like everybody's been down the list. You may not be totally finished. And as we go down, then you can still play along, if you will. So, I want y'all just to call out at the same time with whatever you thought. Brahman,
That's Buddhism.
Brahman,
What number you want us to call out by the,
well, I'm gonna go straight down.
okay.
Number 1, Brahman's Hinduism.
Yeah.
What about the 5 precepts? That one's Buddhism, right?
I didn't get that one.
I didn't either.
Holy Trinity,
Christianity.
that should have been a resounding yell.
It's 5, 9, 12, 13, and 3 is what I have.
What? You got Holy Trinity under more than one?
Yeah, under Christianity. Yeah,
The Holy Trinity is one word.
but it's 2 in this.
Did I put it on there twice?
Number 3 says holy with a capital H and Trinity with a capital T, a second word.
That's what we call it, the Holy Trinity.
Yes,
That's Christianity.
that's Christianity.
Yes, and nobody else. So that's why
All of those things,
nobody else believes in that but
Nobody else
Christians.
believes that, I don't think.
What?
I don't think anybody else believes
I know
that.
okay, that's right.
Yeah,
I see what
Okay.
you're saying.
but this is a good discussion, yeah. All right, Tannic,
That one I
Here's
couldn't
number
look
4.
at.
Judaism.
Judaism.
Judaism. Now, here we can see something differently. Monotheistic,
3 of them.
and what are the 3?
Islam,
Judaism,
Judaism,
Christianity.
Christianity.
Yes, and you're gonna take that to your grave, right? Very good. Okay, the Talmud.
You're right.
That's Judaism.
Judaism.
Yes, the Talmud is another part of the Holy Scripture, but it's not part of the framework. Okay, the Sunnis,
That's Islam.
Islam, Mecca,
Islam.
Islam, the Second Coming,
Christianity.
Christianity.
Christianity. Now, here's one of the things about karma.
Buddhism and Hinduism.
What?
Buddhism and Hinduism.
Say it louder.
Buddhism,
And
Hinduism.
And Hinduism, absolutely, very good. Reincarnation,
Buddhism and
Buddhism.
Hinduism.
same thing. Yes, those are the 2 kind of carryovers, right? God goes by many names.
How do you put that for
Buddhism.
Buddhism?
Buddhism.
Yeah, because they don't really have like a religion, yeah. The forgiveness of sin.
Christianity.
Yes, and thank you, God.
Cow?
Where's the cow sacred?
Buddhism.
Excuse me?
Buddhism.
Excuse me?
Hinduism.
Oh, it's Hinduism.
Hinduism. But there's so much similarity there, I can see why that would be confusing.
Hinduism.
Yes. You might think, and I don't mean this in any disparaging way, but I look for any way I can remember something. I need all the help I can get. The Hinduism goes way back to the earliest days.
It's the oldest.
And seeing a cow as sacred might be more like back in the oldest beginning of mankind, womankind. Okay, now,
Or maybe they didn't have cows as we call them cows.
maybe so. Maybe so. When I was in Africa, I mean, the cows walked everywhere. And they did any other naturally body functions that they chose to do on the mud streets right in front of the motel, wherever. Okay, now I asked you and thought it'd be nice if you wrote us some meetings, but time is just not going to be good. Here's where we're going to give thanks that we are Christian people. But what do we believe in? We believe in grace and we believe in mercy. And so out of grace and mercy, you're going to take this home, and when you have time, you're going to use your little booklet, and you're going to learn on your own by coming up with some little tiny meanings, and I trust that you're going to do that, and you will enhance your learning even more.
Thank you.
We have all graduated. The group got smaller each time, but I do know Sarah didn't have to be here. Well, let's close with a word of prayer. If someone feels called to pray, I'd love for you to do that. Well, in honor of your dinner, I will pray. Loving God, God's so wonderful that we can only describe you in just so many, many different terms. Compassionate, caring, almighty, creator God. We thank you that not only have we had the opportunity to get to know a little bit about other people, that you love as much as you love us, but that we've been able to see some of the similarities, and the biggest similarity of all, I believe, is the similarity of loving you and being in positive relationships with other people. And so I pray, Lord, that you bless each and every person who chose to come. They didn't come because they were going to get anything from it other than more tolerance, more understanding, and probably being wiser. We give you thanks for this day and every other day, Lord. Go with us now. Amen. Go in peace.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
We will, of course, always have Bible studies, but we won't have one until the early